As a games artist, I wanted to explore what TF2 might have looked like if it was made today using next-gen features such as ray tracing and real-time destruction. So, using Unreal Engine 5, I did just that. Team Fortress 2 is a class-based shooter created by Valve which takes place in a vibrant and stylized version of the 1960s. It's known for its fast-paced gameplay, witty humor, and memorable characters, and the game is still bringing in around 70,000 concurrent players on Steam every day, 16 years after its release. I start by opening Hammer, the map editor that TF2 maps were made in. I did this to collect reference images and so that I could access all of the game's textures through the material browser and export them out. I'm taking these textures as I don't want this remake to be an ultra-realistic version of TF2. The art style is so iconic and charming, and I don't want this to turn into just another soulless modern game. With these textures exported, I can quickly up-res them through Stable Diffusion and import them into Substance Sampler, where I can use bitmap to material to turn them into full materials. I'm doing this because with modern advances in real-time rendering, we can now have our materials lit with physical accuracy, whereas TF2 was made before this was possible. With the references I collected from Hammer on my second monitor, I could crack on with blocking out the buildings. There isn't a lot of interesting stuff happening at this stage, as I'm only going to be using this to get the scale correct for my future buildings. I would normally suggest you try and measure what you're making, but I just kind of eyeballed this one and it turned out pretty good, I think. Once the blockout is done, we can import it into Unreal and get a proper idea of the scale of our environment. Let's make a quick landscape for this environment, again, always looking at our reference. The first improvement that I wanted to make was for the walls to be proper 3D assets instead of just flat planes for tiling textures. I decided to do this as now we have Nanite inside of Unreal Engine 5, we can really push the amount of polygons we have on screen into the millions with little performance cost. The main expense that I'll be looking out for are shadows and textures, as these tend to be the most expensive elements when creating a game. With some plank models placed around, I could use the modelling tools inside of Unreal to chop up my planks to ensure they fit perfectly to my blockout. Doing this all inside of Unreal meant I could work quickly and see the results instantly. I decided to make some broken planks to break up the repetition a little bit and to add some more visual interest to the walls. As the environment is mostly made up of these planks, I spent some time placing them around while changing things like the colour and rotation. This again is to just create more variation in the environment, otherwise it might have looked a bit boring. As you can probably tell, there are a lot of these to place and it took the best part of the day to place them all. I did exactly the same process for all of the corrugated buildings and the roofs as well. Now all of the main elements are complete, it was time to start on the medium detail assets, like this supporting wall for the tower above. This is when the environment really starts to come together as the recognisably TF2 elements start appearing. This bridge, walkway thing is one of the most recognisable elements of this map, so it's really important that I get this right. I started by placing these groups of planks to get the correct shape, and when I was happy with the placement, I came back and messed up the planks to look more natural. I also started working on the supports, as it's just a really cool detail and I wanted to get it in as soon as possible. You can see, after some time spent on this, it's coming together well and it's got a really interesting form due to the broken and mismatching planks. Next, I modelled some windows inside UE5 and placed these all around the buildings. I made variations of these by changing the colours and placing assets in front of them to create boiled up windows and things like wooden shutters or blinds. Getting some textures on the ground really made this look like the real deal. I painted this rocky texture around the edges of paths and next to walls, and I also had a cliff texture that I put on vertical sides. Using the same cliff texture, I displaced this smooth cube to create an asset that I could use as a cliff. This isn't the cleanest model ever, but it works perfectly well for this project. Here I am playing with the materials to see if I can make any details pop. I also try out tinting the colour a bit, which I think works quite well and stops it from looking washed out. Now I just have to place them around a bit. To make the payload tracks, I created this spline blueprint that allows me to bend and extrude out my track model. This gives me great control over the placement of the track and means I can have it sit flush to the ground. I'm almost finished with the environment now, so the last thing I'll do is place some rocks and pebbles on the ground, mainly at the base of walls, as this would break up the straight line that tends to happen where they connect. I'm really pleased with how this turned out. This is the first little run around I'm doing with the first person camera, and I think the scale is really good. I think it works really well, and this is still before ray tracing or anything is enabled. I've just done a couple of little bits off camera that I didn't record, like the decals are now in and the fence along the back you can see there. Yeah, I think just little things that I didn't feel were worth recording. Now it's time to start on the real-time destruction. I'm using Chaos for this, which is built into Unreal Engine. It's a really powerful tool that allows you to fracture your meshes, which you can then trigger in-game. But I'm not going to be going too insane on the amount of fractures as I'm limited by my hardware. I'll be keeping it modest with just these 3 assets. So, let's try blowing this stuff up. Hold on, something's not quite right here. Ah, that's better. Oops. So the rocket jumping, I added that in the projectile blueprint. I added a radial force actor. In here there's also the references for chaos, and I spawn a particle when it hits something. Lastly, I made a target practice range. These targets move back and forth, and when you hit one they'll add a point to the points counter at the top left. And with that, I'm calling it done. Let's go to the final preview with RTX on. I really must say, thank you so much if you've made it this far. I would like to make more of these types of videos, so please, if you have an idea of what I could make next, I'd really appreciate it if you could leave a comment. So far my ideas are Assassin's Creed, but in Japan, like a JoJo video game adaptation, or like a first-person version of Clash of Clans, something like that. Anyway, that's it. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.